that's the idea. That's the whole reason that the ICM is so good. That is an absolutely stunning fish. So the cold weather is finally here, and if you're anything like me, I still want to get out and have some time on the bank and hopefully catch a few fish. And I've brought you today to what I'm calling almost like the classic commercial fishery, Lindholme Lakes. Absolutely brilliant place with loads and loads of fish in it. But of course, in winter, they're going to move around, they're going to ball up, they're going to be in different areas of your pegs at different times. And the conditions aren't always favourable for a pole. Take today. It's a really strong wind today. It's like a 20-mile-an-hour wind, and although it's off my back a little bit, you know, different pegs on different places, it's going to be across you, it's going to be in your face, and it's going to make a pole almost useless. In fact, a lot of the time in the winter, when you've got a little bit of room, the fish will push out of pole range, which is what makes the feeder or bomb such a good tool for the winter, and particularly because a lot of the time, you know, in your matches, you might catch on the pole later on, and you might want to be fishing with like, you might want to be fishing with your rod and searching around during the day. So I'm going to show you today the way that I like to approach a commercial in winter, particularly when I've got a little bit of room. And it's really about using the ICM system to get the best out of it, because a few years ago at Preston, we decided that, you know, the ICS, as great as it is, in the depths of winter, when it does go really cold and frosty, you're going to want something a little bit smaller. You're going to want something a little bit more refined. And I've got such an amazingly easy setup for what I'm doing here that I think you guys will really like it. And hopefully, with the bits I'm going to show you, you'll catch a few fish. So before we get stuck into the fishing, let's run you through the setup, because I've got something a little bit top secret in here, which I'm just going to share with you. Don't tell anyone, by the way. I think the setup needs to be really simple. When I sit down, I don't want multiple rods, I don't want loads of different options. I really just want to be able to search my peg and do what I need to do as quickly as possible. And ICM gives me that, flexibility. Now, when I'm on a small commercial, I think it's really crucial that you've got a nice short rod. I've got a 9-foot Superior X, which is, I mean, as good as it gets really. It's super light, nice and soft in the top. You know, I can chuck if I need to, 30 meters, no problem. And it's all about getting that balance. I don't want to be playing fish with big long landing nets. I want a nice short rod where when I'm playing a fish, the fish comes up under my feet and I'm in control of what's going on. So that's why I've got a nice 9-foot rod. I love my 520 Centris. When I'm commercial fishing, I love a Centris. And on there I've got 0.23 today, 6 pound sinking feeder mono. Now, you could use 0.20. You could drop down to 0.20, but I'm on Bonsai Lake today, which around the island still a little bit odd roots and that growing in, like you get on most commercial fisheries. So if I'm around the island, it's a little bit snaggy or rocky. I don't want anything that's going to let me down. And I don't really need a super light main line, so I'm just going to stick with the 0.23. If I was on a lake whereby I wanted to chuck a super light bomb a long way, then I might look at 0.20 main line. But if not, 0.23. So dead simple so far. 9-foot rod, reel and 6 pound main line. And then I've got the ICM stem here on the line. Just slid that on, so I'm ready to go. And this is my top secret part of this rig, which I think is really great and it gives me loads of flexibility. So what I've done is I've just put a a medium stop rubber stop. Now, what you got to remember is we do a brilliant ICM bead. So if you're the sort of person who loves to have short hook lengths, long hook lengths tied up, loads of different hook lengths tied up, and you just want to quickly change your hook length on the ICM bead, then brilliant. You go for that, that'll work really well. For me, I often just like the flexibility of having a hook length on and then changing it as I go. So you'll see here, as the stem comes down, this medium stop, just like the ICM system, fits loosely into the stem. So it just literally goes into the end of the stem like that. It can't go any further than just in like that. And you can see it just literally comes in and out with no resistance whatsoever. But it's absolutely brilliant because it's nice and neat. And it means if the fish picks the bait up like this, it's got a little bit of resistance there. So obviously as it does that, it hooks itself and the rod goes round. Of course, it's completely free running, so it's well within all the rules. So I'm getting the best of both, which is what ICM beads do as well. They do exactly the same thing. All right. Now, if you're really not happy and you want something that doesn't go in the end, I could use a large stop there, no problem. But I love the medium. It sits lovely and neat in the end like that, and I'm ready to go. Now, if I was going to fish the mini method or say mini banjo on this ICM stem, I'm going to want a short hook length. So I've got a little 3-inch hook length there today, 011 power line, a 20 kkm, and a band on the end. Really straight, simple. I'm going to want to band little mini wafters. I'm going to want to band a pellet. They're the sort of key baits that I might want to use on this rig. But if I look at the water today and I see that it's a little bit coloured, which we'll touch on in a bit more in a minute, I might want to switch between bomb and method. I might want to put a banjo on, I might want to put a little pellet feeder on. And the beauty of this is, if I want to fish with a bomb and pellet and I want to elongate my hook length, I literally just slide that rubber stop up the line. And you can see there I've now created a 12-inch hook length. You know, obviously I've got the sinking feeder mono there and my short little piece of thinner line, which, trust me and believe me, the fish don't pay any attention to this bit. It's only the very last inch of line that makes any difference. That's a lot of testing that has come for that. And also I might want to start, like say, bomb and bread popped up off the bottom. Well, I might want to move that 8 inches. And if I just had a short hook length on, I could do that as well. So by having this stop in here, I've got so much flexibility in what I can do with my hook length. And then of course it can move up and down the line, and it literally takes seconds to set up. So like I said, if you're a bead guy, brilliant, the beads are fantastic. For me, I love these rubber stops. It gives me loads of flexibility to do what I want to do. So that's the setup, really straightforward. I think it's about time we looked at the fishing. Okay, so on to the best bit, and it's the fishing. All right, now I'm going to try to maybe help you out and make your decisions on the sort of water that you go to. All right, so I'm today on Bonsai Lake, great lake, loads of fish. And because of the makeup of the bottom and the fact it's a little bit muddy, it's windy, there's lots of fish moving about, this lake's got loads of colour. And when I say loads of colour, I'm struggling to see more than about 6 inches down. Now, over the next month or so, as we head into January and we've had weeks of frost and that, I expect that colour will drop out quite a bit, and I'll probably be able to see maybe 18 inches down. So at the moment, say starting on bomb and bread or even bomb and corn, something very visual, I'm not feeling it. So if your water that you go to has got good visibility and you can see like 18 inches down, bomb and bread, bomb and corn is an amazing way to start. And what I would do is, if I was doing that, I would put the 20 gram bomb, which I've got here, onto the stem, and I would chuck about with my bread probably 6 to 8 inches off the bottom and just search around for a few fish for the first hour or so, so I knew where I was at. I'd probably look at loose feeding a little bit of corn later in the day, something nice and visual, something the fish can easily identify and eat. And they're my sort of 2 go-to tactics when the water drops a bit clearer. Now at the moment the water's really coloured, so the fish are more acting on smell. So they're going to be looking for baits like pellets, ground bait, micros, that sort of thing. They're going to be looking for something a little bit smellier, those baits that maybe they want to pick out a little bit more. So I don't really want to be starting on a bomb and bread. Ideally, I want to be starting on something like some sort of like little target, if you like. So I'm going to slide my stop down there, and I'm literally just going to put on a 6mm hard pellet. One of the fishery pellets here. Pop a 6mm pellet on to start with. Again, I've got my wafters with me, got some bright ones, but I've also brought some darker ones like dark red, because I think that might be a better colour with such is the extreme of the colour in the water today. And I'll tell you what I'm going to start on. I'm actually going to start on the little method feeder. This is one of my favourite ICM setups. This little method is absolutely beautiful, and it's windy today. I need to cast accurately, and there's because it's windy and there's lots of action on the water, I'm not worried about it sounding a little bit louder. So I've gone for the heavier version. I've gone for the 28 grammer, and it's really super straightforward. And the reason I want to start on this little bit of bait is because I want a little bit of smell, and then I'll talk to you about how we're going to introduce a few pellets, maybe loose feeding a few pellets for bomb and pellet, because I think bomb and pellet will be good today. This little feeder is so easy to load. It has got a mould, but personally I prefer to load it like I'm going to show you here. So all I do is dip it into the pellets, and like a first press of pellets with my thumb across the middle of the method feeder, just like that. So you can see they're held on nicely, and I tend to press them quite firmly. I don't really want them coming off the feeder. If anything, I wouldn't even be bothered if I wound in with a few of those on the feeder at the end. And then all I do is just lay the pellet on top, give it a little touch so it just holds on while I do this, and then I literally just sprinkle a few micros over the hook and line, and barely, and I really do mean barely, just barely touch them on. So in my head, as I cast out, that's going to hit the water. These few little micros are just going to fall off the side, drop down through the water, bit of smell coming off them, scatter around on the bottom, and then I'm going to have a little wedge of hard micros on the feeder with my pellet literally just laid next to it. It's not going to stay on that feeder, it's going to fall off to the side of that feeder, which is great because effectively the fish will come into that really smelly little patch of bait, and all that will be there to eat is my 6mm pellet. So that's why I think that method is so great. The little banjo does a similar type of thing, so you can get the same sort of effect with that. So that's how I'm going to start the session. Don't forget, it's winter, it's cold, I don't need loads of bait, but there's probably 120 micros on there. It's a lot of micros, you know, so it's the sort of thing I might tap in on a pole on a really good day. I mean, often you tap in even less than that, but we're casting to where the fish is. Let's put it in the water. So I've clipped it up, I put the bomb on to clip up. I'm literally just going to chuck that in just off the side of that island. Nice, like not tight to the island, it's really, really cold, so I don't want to be like really tight to the island. But this is basically the first sort of search, if you like, for fish. You've got to remember, the reason I'm thinking that you know, I'm fishing with a rod and line today is because I'm searching the area where the fish are. And here at Lindholme in the winter, the fish definitely seem to congregate around these little islands in the gaps. You've got to remember, a lot of time there's anglers either side, there's a lot of pressure on the lake, and the fish will back off into the sort of quieter areas, if you like. And naturally for the fish, the quieter areas is the middle. So if you're on a commercial that doesn't have an island, but it's got like, say, an open expanse of water, you can almost visualize that the fish will congregate towards the middle of the lake. You know, if the wind's relatively warm, there'll probably be more windward side, but they'll certainly be towards the middle. So, you know, if you imagine most days when you come fishing on a lake like this, there'll be anglers everywhere. As it happens today, there's not many anglers on, but you know, in a match, or even when you're pleasure fishing at the weekend, there'll be anglers around the lake. The fish will congregate to those places away from the anglers. And what this has allowed me to do now is have a little bit of time, probably like half an hour or so, just having like 5-minute casts to where I think the fish might be, and I'll see if I get any response to that bait. Do I get any indications of liners? Do I get a bite? You know, by doing that, I can almost like build a little area with a few pellets in and just see how the fish react. Now, over the course of the next 30 minutes, if I catch 3 or 4 fish, that's fantastic, I can stay at it. if I get an odd indication and maybe I know there's a few fish there, but I'm not catching anything, little indication there, and I've not caught anything, maybe I can start flicking a few pellets and maybe switch to bomb and pellet. But if I catch nothing there, if I have half an hour and there's literally nothing at all, then I know that that's almost like a dead area of my peg, like clearly the fish aren't naturally there. So that's when I would start to loose feed pellets over the top in that area, because it becomes almost like my throwaway area. It's not an area where there's a few fish naturally congregated. It's an area where I'm going to try and draw a few fish to, and then I can search other places to find the fish with the method feeder or the pellet feeder or whatever it might be. But that's how I would sort of look at starting the session. Let's see how this first 30 minutes goes by, and then we'll come back and look what we're going to do to make a few adjustments. Right, it's time to make our first change. That was my third cast then on the little method, and I've had 2 or 3 little taps and indications that tell me there is an odd fish there. But do you know what's going through my head? It's really coloured, and I'm almost wondering that they're like rooting around at the moment, and I want to sort of target my bait a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that banjo feeder off, and I'm going to put a little pellet feeder on, because I feel like I want to actually just trap the bait in a little bit more. All right, so I'll show you what I mean by that. If I just take this pellet feeder, what you've got to remember about a pellet feeder is there's only one access point, and it's right at the mouth of the feeder. So what I'm going to do is just push a few pellets really softly into the feeder, and I'm just going to put my pellet just on the end there like that, and give it a few more over the top. So very similar to the method, but now there's only one little space they can get at, because I just felt like with those few micros, it was almost like they were coming to the micros, they could smell what was going on there, but it was it wasn't quite right for them. Maybe they were just rooting around. So I'm going to have like 3 or 4 casts with this now, because I do feel there's an odd fish there. And if this doesn't work, I'm then going to look at maybe making a little change to loose feeding or something like that. But for now, just have a little go with this pellet feeder. And that's the beauty of this system. I can just literally take that method off, put this little pellet feeder on, which I've just got a feeling is going to be a little bit more effective. So let's have a little look. So, as my wife would tell you, I'm certainly not right all the time, but this time it's been like turning a light on. This is the 3rd fish on this. I literally had one first cast out, and this is why I think, right, it's these chunky F1s, and these F1s have got small mouths. And personally, what I think happens is with the F1s is that in this colour they've been grubbing around at the bait, and when they were grubbing around by that pellet feeder, they just couldn't get it. Look at the mouth. It's really small on that fish. So I feel like that's literally just come in directly to that feeder, and then all it's had the option to eat is my 6mm pellet. And it's been brilliant. I've had 3 chucks and I've had 3 fish. So I'm like really happy with that. All F1s. Something that I would, and I'm casting sort of towards the island now, because I'm really happy with that, because I'm happy that I'm casting like at the point of the island. There's obviously a few fish there, and I'm having a nice little run. Now, on the perfect day, goes around every single cast all day, I put £100 in the net, great day's fishing. Unfortunately, fishing doesn't work like that. It's not always the same. So what this has given me an opportunity to do now is to think about my peg. And it means that I can use like a different area of the peg to start loose feeding a few pellets. So I've got my catapult here and my bomb. I know there's fish to the point of that island. I'm really happy with that. But I need to be thinking, maybe not straight away, maybe in the next half an hour, see how it goes on this pellet feeder. But I need to be thinking about an area of my peg where I can do something to give it a break. And because I know the point's good, I don't really want to now be loose feeding at the point, because then I'm just loose feeding on one line, and swapping between the two is not going to make any sense. So what I would prefer to do is I've got a little bit of open water to my right. There's a pallet, I can see a pallet on the far bank, and I'm just going to line up with that, and I can ping some pellets at that. Like basically in the gap, in the open water. I can be nice and accurate with a nice accurate catapult, and it just gives me somewhere now where if I feel the fish are like they've been sort of hammered by the point, I can come away from the point into that open water and maybe switch to the bomb. Just literally take my feeder off, switch to the bomb and try and catch a few. So I'll start teeing that up. I mean, I just did that for you there. Now I'd probably have a good hour at this because I've caught 3 in 3. I mean, I think it's very unlikely that I'm going to cast out and not get another few. So I'd certainly wait till I felt it was not slowing down, but you've got to think about it in a sort of realistic way. You're not going to catch all day on that same spot. So you've just got to be ready. So just think about when your timings might want to be with that. Personally, I'm going to have another half an hour or so, and then I'm going to think about loose feeding that area, because for me that's going to be really important to keeping catching, and it's what makes this system so great. So just while I'm loading up this pellet feeder, a reminder, don't squeeze the pellets in too hard, it's fatal. Literally just a tiny gentle touch. It's only a little feeder, it doesn't need a heavy hand on it because it's only little, so it holds everything in really easily. Honestly, I can't tell you how gently I'm touching that in. And then I'm clipped up nicely to the island. That's brilliant. Like sort of like a metre off it, where I know there's a little bit of extra depth. Don't forget, it's freezing cold now, so I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to be casting in sort of 6 inches of water. I've looked for like 2.5 foot, that sort of thing. So look, that's absolutely perfect. All teed up. I'm going to start feeding that pellet line in the next bit, and we'll have a little look, see if we can change to that, see if we can have a look at that setup and see if we can make that work as well. Right, it's time to try that bomb line. I'm desperate to try it. I've caught a few on this. They're mostly small F1s. I am having to wait sort of like 3-4 minutes for a bite, and I'm not getting one every chuck. I would say probably like I've had 3 out of 5, which is okay. But I always like to see if it's a little bit better on another line, just if I feel like that's what's needed. So literally all I'm going to do, it's so straightforward. Flick that top cap off and push the stem out. And I'm just going to go with the light bomb, like the little 10 grammer. It's a bit windy, so I might put the 20 grammer on if I'm struggling, but just I do love that little light bomb. It's so neat. And then all I'm going to do is literally slide my stop. I've got a 3-inch hook length, so I'm going to slide it about 10 inches up the line. So I've got about 12-13 inches, I reckon, there, something like that. Nice little typical bomb setup, so easy to do, as you can see. I'm going to put a fresh 6mm pellet on there. I'm going to go for a slightly darker one. There's a few darker ones mixed in here for some reason, so I'm going to pick up a little slightly darker one so they can pick it out. There you go, look. And I've been loose feeding those pellets off to the side. Now, here's the key. I've got what I did when I clipped up to the island. Obviously, I clipped up to the island, and where I've been feeding my pellets is level. So I knew that I could keep my clip on, because I love casting to a clip, I've got to be honest, and hopefully gain some accuracy. Now, if I feel like I want to take my clip off, I can do, but I do think it's important, if you can fish a clip, to do it, because when your bomb hits that clip, it goes in nice every time, and it just gives you a little bit of control and understanding for your peg. So let's just give that a little, oh yeah, makes a great noise, that does. Even the cameraman's happy with that, I can tell. All right, so look, put that down right on the spot where I loose fed, and my classic approach to like this sort of thing, I've been feeding like 6 pellets twice, right? Because they're 6 mils, they're quite big, I am trying to attract slightly bigger fish. That's why I haven't gone with 4. So putting like 6 pellets, I'm literally counting them in, sit nice and flat in this catapult, pinging them as accurately as I can where that bomb is. Now it's hard to judge, but because I've got the island there, I've got like, so I say, a sort of a line where I can make that judgment. That's great. I reckon that's great. So just ping those 6 pellets out. And I do it, the reason I do it twice is because I love that little plip, 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 plip. If I just did 12 pellets once, I kind of think in my head, 6 twice is more attractive than 12 once. That's what I'm saying. So that's why I like to do it like that. And the reason I've gone for like, because you might be thinking, Lee, why aren't you doing like 2s, 3s pellets or 30 pellets as it may be? For me, it's all about the fish and the fishing that you've got. I've probably got like, I think I've got 12 or 13 F1s in my net. I haven't had a carp yet. But it tells me if I've caught that many F1s and I know there's lots of smaller F1s in the lake, if I feed like 2 or 3 pellets, it's literally no bait. Do you know what I mean? It's not, there's no amount of bait going into your peg. So I can almost imagine those 2 or 3 would just get eaten relatively quickly. And I wouldn't be drawing the fish into that area, because don't forget, that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to draw the fish into a little area. If I was fishing for like, let's say I was on a water that you were just fishing for 1 or 2 massive carp, then okay, 2s and 3 8mm pellets might work really well. And likewise, if I was on a water where there was like loads of small fish, you know, that's why I've gone with the 6mm today, just to try and, so they don't get eaten so much. I think if I was feeding 4s, I'd have to feed like maybe 24mm twice, just to, because I think they get eaten too easily by those little F1s. So that's why I've gone for that amount. It's like a happy medium. Started my stopwatch, so chucked my bomb out, fed my pellets twice, started my stopwatch. Don't forget, bites have been coming like 3 to 4 minutes on the feeder. So here, is that an F1? What a great start. That's my first chuck on that. That's absolutely brilliant. So we're actually 1 minute and 50 in on the stopwatch, and that's the sort of thing I'm looking to do. I'm looking to chuck out, like, I was hoping 3 to 4 minutes is actually my quickest bite of the day. So it just goes to show I've been doing that. I've been feeding that, I reckon, for about 20 minutes, probably like every 5 minutes. So I reckon I've fed it like 6 or 7 times, something like that, 5 times perhaps, something like that. So I haven't fed it a lot. That was probably the, like I say, the 5th, maybe 6th time I've fed it. Feels like a slightly better F1 or something like that, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'm just going to take my time, because it's not doing a lot. It's just nodding around. Could be one of those big ones. Oh yeah, it's a decent sized fish. So it's not only is it my, you know, my quickest bite of the day, it feels like it's my biggest fish of the day as well so far. Let's see what we've got here. Let's see what we've got here. What have we got here then? Little carp maybe? Maybe, I don't know. But I'm really happy with that. It's quite exciting. It just goes to show why having another area of your peg so important. You can see that 9-foot rod, the reason that's so important. Look how soft it is. Don't forget, I've only got a 20 on. I've got a really small little hook on. Didn't want a big hook on. I'm winter fishing. You know, like a 20 and a KKM, I would say, is like an 18 sort of size in a GPM. That's slightly off size. So just, you know, just a small but strong hook, if you like. There we go. It's a carp. Look at that little common. That's brilliant. I haven't had a carp yet today. That is my first chuck. We're now 3 minutes odd on the clock, and we've got our first carp, biggest fish of the day, in the net. And you can see why having that system is so important, because it's so versatile. And like I've told you before, set up, look, just hooked in the bottom lip there. So look, great carp, lovely carp. I'm not going to pick him up, I'll just hold him up in the net. Look, you can see him there. He's probably about 2.5, maybe even 3 pound. So absolutely perfect, and such an easy and clean way of fishing. My hook looks good. I just have a nice little check of everything now. I don't want to be rushing. I just want to, one of the most important things is just to try and get this right all the time. One of the things with bomb fishing is you can easily get caught up, and that's why I use my stopwatch. I don't want to be like loose feeding willy-nilly. I want to be trying to control how often I put the bait in. Sort of like like I said before, like 3 to 4 minutes. So we're on 4 minutes now. So as soon as I chuck out, it'll be time to feed straight away. If I'd have got it in a bit quicker, I might have waited a bit longer. So let's just pop that again. I've got the clip on. So the nice thing about having the clip on is you know where you've chucked it, don't you? That's the most important thing. Tell you what. Oh, I had one on then. That's ridiculous. Thought so. I thought it dropped back there. I think if I'd have been a little bit more on it, I'd have got one. Look at that. There's obviously fish have just gathered where that, in that open water. That's what I mean. I've got the clip on so I can be super accurate. I know I've literally dropped that back on the same place, haven't I? I want to feed. If there's a few fish there, I do want to feed. So I'm just going to count my 6 pellets in. Just give that a little tighten up. Doesn't need to be too tight. Concentrate. Wind got that a little bit, so I'm a little bit disappointed with myself there. Really concentrate. Wind's blowing strongly right to left, so I'm just, you can see I'm really concentrating when I flick them in. I'm going to do another 6 because those first ones were slightly strayed, if I'm being honest, which I'm not happy about. So there we go, right on the money, right on the money. So it just goes to show how different methods at different times can be so good. And I feel like I've still got the island if I need to go to the island, so I can drop back on the pellet feeder to the island. Don't get me wrong, this might just be a flash in the pan. You know, I might find that I get a little run here and you've got to keep moving about, but that's the idea. That's the whole reason that the ICM is so good. I've got that versatility to change. If, for example, that's a 10-gram bomb. Now, as it happens, it's been beautiful and I've managed to cast it really accurately. But if that wind gets any more troublesome, or I wanted to go a bit closer to the island, I was a bit nervous, I could just put that 20-gram bomb on, which is a heavier bomb. That's a proper fish, he says. I could have put that heavier bomb on, and I might find that the heavier bomb's a bit better. It's nice and windy today, so the light bomb might not make a difference, but it's working amazing at the moment. Look at that, 2 really quick fish. What we got here then? I'll laugh at it. No, I think this one is an F1. Let's have a look, because it just amazes me that the first sort of few fish, you know, it's one of the F1s. So there you go, nice F1 though, good one. Nice stamper. This is what the stamp's been like well over £1. They're lovely fish in here at the moment. I mean, look at, I just think F1's in that condition. That is an absolutely stunning fish. We're so lucky we get to fish for those in this country. They're beautiful, beautiful fish. He's just hooked just on the bottom lip there. But you can see how effective that bomb's been. You know, you're literally watching this live, if you like, because, you know, I was sure that there would be some fish on that, but I've got to be honest, I wasn't expecting it to stand out better than what I was doing. So I'm going to plop back in again, repeat the process, and we'll sort of see how the peg gets on over the next 20-30 minutes, and if we've got to make any more adjustments, or if we can keep slaying them in the same area. Right, it's been brilliant, to be honest. This bomb, they've really found me on the pellet, and I've had loads of fish, loads of bites. I'm having a fantastic day, so I'm really lucky today. It's looking like bomb and pellet is going to be the way. I haven't really had to change. I've got some corn here on my tray, and I've got some, like, you know, I've got the option of going back to the island, but I've had like 2 or 3 better carp as well as the F1. So I am really happy. That would be me. That is how I would probably look to fish now. Obviously we'd see what happens, but that has been brilliant. But it's a great time while the rod's back out. I've just chucked it back out to show you the ICM feeders, because it's not always going to be as easy as putting a bomb on. Different venues will want different things and different responses. So just looking at them here, we've got the bomb, we've got the 20-gram bomb here, I've got the 10-gram bomb on while we get this fish on. And when I'm looking at different sizes of bombs, I'm always thinking about the depth, the disturbance to the fish. It's not particularly deep where I'm fishing out there. I think that little bomb is working amazing, because I've got, like, you know, 6mm pellets, and it almost sounds like one of the pellets going in, to be honest. It's really been wonderful. But just as a word of warning, when I'm fishing like bomb and bread, for example, I always think having a heavier bomb to almost hook the fish against is really important. So I would go for the heavier bomb if I was bomb and bread fishing, while we get this nice F1 in. Which is why it's important, you know, to have 2 weights of bomb. I would always carry the 2 with me, and then I can choose what I want to go with. So that's when I change the bomb. Let's look at the other options. I can't afford to chuck that back out. It's going to go straight round again, isn't it? It's been brilliant. So obviously got those 2 bombs. Now, of course, we talked about like starting on that method feeder style, which I'll tell you now, I've had some amazing days here where the fish around the island, you want to be feeding like small amounts of pellets regularly, and you can do that in 2 ways. You can either put the little method feeder on, which I think is great, comes in again 2 different weights, or the little banjo. This little banjo is really a work of art because we could use the smaller stem. It's given us a little bit more depth. So when I'm using the minis, it tends to be the little banjo I go for. It's so neat, it's so compact, it's such a great way of fishing. So, you know, if you think your commercial needs a little bit less bait method feeder style, these are great options. Probably the banjo for me, but like I said, I've shown you how to load that wider method as well, because there's 2 different options there. And again, you never know what's going to be right on your fishery. I recommend that sort of feeder if I'm chucking against a feature. Let's say you've got a nice reedy bank, or you're chucking to an island. That's when I would look for that sort of thing. Now, it doesn't always work. Pellet feeder was better today. I'm sure it's the extreme colour that has made that pellet feeder stronger. I mean, the pellet feeder, we've worked on this over the years so much, it doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't need changing in any way. I don't need to make any adjustments. It is literally the perfect pellet feeder. So, you know, if you're having those problems where you're getting line bites, you're getting indications, switch to a pellet feeder. It can catch you so many fish. So I always have the pellet feeder on hand as an option. And of course, in winter, it's not always about pellets. A lot of the time, maggot feeder can be great. So we've got a little ICM maggot feeder here, which I think is fantastic. It's something that I've used a lot at Hallcroft when I'm like trying to nick a few extra fish. So I'll put like literally 5 or 6 maggots in there, little short hook length, just fish it out on exactly the same setup. Honestly, it works absolutely brilliant. It casts like a bomb because the weight's at the bottom. It's one of the nicest little maggot feeders I've ever used. The best thing about these, they've got a little like swivel opening, so you literally swivel it open, drop your few maggots in, and then swivel it shut. It takes seconds to do. The holes are nice and big so the maggots can crawl out. It's a brilliant and very underused feeder, that one. So that's one that I always carry with me. I wouldn't use it today because it's too coloured. I know it's not going to work, but maggot feeder in the depths of winter in those January days can be brilliant. So again, it's nice and effective. And then finally, we've got the little cage, which you can use with pellets, you can use with ground bait. It's a great little ground bait feeder. It's something that I've used a lot and caught a lot of fish on, so don't ignore that. The other nice thing about this is you can almost like control the load. So again, it's a little bit like a pellet feeder if you want it to be, and you can just nip these in. And don't forget, all the ICM feeders, they come with a swivel. You can buy a swivel stem option. And the swivel stem, basically you take your stem off and put the swivel stem on. And when you put the swivel stem on, you can use them as a normal feeder. So this is one of my favourite little Hallcroft feeders. I use the little 12 grammer, tiny little bit of ground bait, just plipping it in dead regular. It works amazing. So if you're the sort of person that loves a traditional feeder setup as well, you could make the maggot feeder into a traditional little maggot feeder with a swivel stem, and you can do it with a bomb. So I often use these two and the bomb with a swivel stem as an option as well. So that ICM range gives me all those different options of fishing in the winter, which when I've got one rod and I'm trying to get the best out of my swim, it's a no-brainer. Well, this session has turned into an amazing day. It's literally freezing cold. Got all my warm clothing on, my warm seat, the lot. And the fish are still really feeding well, which is great to see. What's been really interesting is because I've had lots of bites, I've actually had a chance to try to work it out in terms of the feeding, how long I wait. And what's really interesting is you get about 3 minutes. You got like a 3-minute window where you might get one. And if you don't get one in that time, the fish are so tuned in to the noise. There's a little indication there that time. The fish are so tuned into the noise, rather than wind it in, chuck it back out again, I found it best to almost pick my catapult up and feed over the top, like sort of those 6 pellets twice. I have tried upping it. I didn't feel like that was quite right, to be fair. I haven't had to change that a lot, which is great. And it's like, woohoo, it's like that noise, that's 2 minutes and 20, you see. It's like that noise from the second feed. I think it's caught me one like 5 or 6 times where like 3 minutes is up, and as the pellets have hit the water, usually the second lot of pellets hit the water and the rod's absolutely pulled round with the fish on. And then I can, if I don't get one on that feed, I can cast back out again over the top, if you see what I mean. So I don't necessarily have to feed again when I cast back out. This time I will. But the fish are so tuned into the noise and searching for those bigger pellets. It's by far been the strongest way of fishing today, which is really, really interesting. And I'm sure on venues you go to, if they hold a few big F1s or something like that, this is such a great way of fishing, because, you know, if you don't want to hold 16 meters of pole, or you feel like the fish are just a little bit out of range, or conditions don't allow it, it's going to be such a great way of searching and getting towards the fish. Just got that pellet a bit wet there. Just a 6mm pellet on that size 20 hook has been so good for me. So I hope you've really enjoyed today, because it's just giving you an insight into my nice little setup and how simple casting around to find the fish can be. And just a few little bits of advice there on the feeding, because it could have been a feeder day, it could have been a micros day. If it had been a bit clearer, I brought my corn with me. But I've just found, there you go, I was about to say, you don't need to feed straight away. I'm sort of giving myself a little window of opportunity, and then I'm feeding, which is kick-starting the peg. So as you can tell, I've had an amazing session. I hope you've enjoyed it. And don't forget, like and subscribe. And there's going to be loads more videos like this on offer for you to enjoy.